Want to know how to make your own Badgey from Star Trek Lower Decks? Well, this is a way. You can try using any of these methods to make your own stuffed animal of any style, but this is how we made our own Badgey at home. It's going to be equipped with a sound generator inside of it as well to say some of his favorite quotes. Let's get started. So in the first place, we have my, up to this point, completed Badgey. You can see he has little legs, cute little boots, and hands. And in the end, he will have these hands folded over like so, and he will have an interior skeleton that you can see here, just made of some crafting wire or anything you have at home. This is coated crafting wire. It's actually used for florist projects, but I've made it just about the size of our Badgey to fit inside to give him the ability to bend and be poseable in the end. All right, so how did we start here? For Badgey, I used quite a few of your typical Blizzard fleeces. The anti-pill versions are the best. However, I did have to break down and go with a Blizzard fleece that's not anti-pill for the lighter yellow, just because of the limited colors available. You can use anything from felting for Muppets. I know some people suggest a website called Fuzzle for that. However, the colors are limited. I wanted to get a nice plethora of golds and yellows. As you can see, Badgey has 2 yellows on the body for the legs and the body, and then he also has different colors for the cuff and the hands. I used felt, so this is just a brown cappuccino, camel, or espresso felt color to do his hands and his booties. I like that better than using more of the fleece because it just gives it a different texture. And also a little bit more sturdiness, thickness for those high contact areas. All right, for how we started Badgey, it's pretty simple. If you haven't had any experience with patterning, you may want to look up a couple YouTube videos on how to make a basic pattern. Myself, I like to use my nice measurements on my table to help me kind of figure out proportions. So I looked up several photos of Badgey online. And I kind of figured out based on the halves, quarters, eighths rule for me. So as you can see, my Badgey pattern, my basic pattern, right? I drew him out so I could figure out where the things were basically placed on him. As you can see, I have these hash marks. So this is about halfway for this piece of fabric, right? And I determined that when you look at Badgey on the photos, about halfway, that's where his arms are kind of sitting slightly above and where his face sits. I used that to break that into another half, and realized if you do that visually, his eyes actually go and extend a little bit beyond that. So this is how I figured out the placement of the items on my pattern. This is all guesswork. I'm self-taught, so a lot of these things are just trial and error. Do what you can on your own, but this is just a basic way. There's notches, as you can see on here, for where I thought my arm placement should be centered, but as you can see on my actual Badgey, they're not on the front piece of fabric, they're on the side. So you just want to make sure that when you line up your side pieces in the end, that they end up in the basic area of where you want your arms and legs. All right, this piece didn't really account for a lot of my salvage. As you can see, my hash marks for salvage are very close to the edge. So sometimes you just, as you're patterning, you realize what you need, a little extra here or a little less there, and you can trim that away. And I gave myself a sizing for the face embroidery so that I could generate it in a program and get it pretty close to the size I need before I built it in the computer. All right, so Badgey, as you can see, has this wide stripe of a different color. A lot of the plushies that you find online are made of vinyl. I really didn't like that. I know why they do it. They do it because it has a nice sheen to it and gives Badgey that reflective quality that you see in the show. I liked the two-tone look. I wanted this to be a snuggly plushie. Our son wants to play with it and run around with it. We want to pose it. We wanted it to be soft. So it's up to you. You can use whatever you want. You can use the fleece. You can use vinyl. It's totally your game here. But as you see, it's 3 pieces, right, across the front. And that's pretty easy to do. It's just a basic seam and then folding those seams outward and pressing them flat. So these are all my patterning pieces for Badgey, and also his guts and fill. So as you can see, Badgey's body is made of 3 pieces. They're all sewn together. You can see kind of the basic patterning for his hand. I kind of messed up on this one. I realized that I needed more fabric that way. So when I cut my actual pattern pieces, I just gave myself an extra inch of salvage there. His arms are a nice basic shape that you can roll, right? Put the seam on the bottom so it's not as visible, and then connect it to the body. For the sides, I actually have them all laying together here. The one piece I cut 2 inches extra to account for the longer side of Badgey's body. But as you can see, the sides are notched in line with the body piece from my pattern. These are each, there's 2 sides on each side. And then the notches are where the your hand would be, your arm would be sewn here. So that's just an idea of where to put placement and what those side pieces look like before they're sewn on. They're very thin, but that allows us to not give him a big chunky body. This is the bottom piece. This piece I actually need to trim down to a similar width as these, but this was my original pattern. As you can see, as I'm patterning and as I'm putting something together, I'm kind of making changes along the way. It's all experimentation. That's the fun of it. It's like a puzzle. For his arms and his legs, I originally patterned them with the curve like his arms have. When I was putting it together, I realized I don't really need that. I could use a straight edge and it would just be fine. So this is the left leg for his body, since that side is longer. And this is the right leg for his body, since that side is shorter. So you can see there's a little bit of difference in length to account for that. For his feet, we made these cute little booties with a boot shape and then a round bottom, which is also the same shape as our wire body. So I built the wire body first. It gave me a little bit more of an idea of how I wanted to make him size-wise, and also how I wanted his hands and feet to fit in. And these are the cuff pieces. This was probably the trickiest part of Badgey, was figuring out how to make his cuff folds in the right place. Originally folded it in half, as you can see on my lines here. But once I got into construction, I realized, you know what? I kind of want it to fold back a little bit, kind of like a sock. So you can play with it and do your own thing, but that's where I was at with that. There's really not a lot of pieces to Badgey. The hardest part of this project is that because they are so small, and by that I mean 3 inches or less in width, getting into his body is a little bit difficult. So you can actually leave seams like on the back of the legs. You can leave them open or close them until you get your skeleton in. My skeleton's pretty bendable, so I can actually slide it down in here, and then I'll use a wooden stick to shove polyfill in the places in between. But you have the option of opening it along the back seam of the leg or the underarm seam on the arm to put it in place. So when I put Badgey all together, and I'll flip him over for you. Oh no, my innards. Badgey's skeleton will actually go in place, be slid into the arms and the legs, and then his back piece will be temporarily sewn on. So I'll probably sew it from here around the top to here initially, get his skeleton into place, and then sew it in place along the other sides, and then stuff him with polyfill on an opening, likely on the side here, or even in the bottom. Not sure yet, gonna figure that out when I get into it. But if you'd like to create your own stuffed animals, you can use this as a way forward on any shape, any animal, or you can even take an existing stuffed animal that you have, build a nice wire skeleton around the same size, open it up across the back and shove it in. Hopefully this helps you, and this is our first try at a Badgey, and we will probably make more. Have a great day.